And welcome in, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'll be reacting to the takes on several different shows, specifically on Fox Sports, because this is where I go to for most of my sports. I feel as if, and I'm not going to take shots at ESPN because I rely on them a lot for my personal use, watching games, and even listening to them. I will hear them out, and I definitely listen to takes there. My number one is Fox Sports, and the reason why is just because I feel like there's less of unity. More people are going to be, not everyone will, but more people are going to have their own opinions on Fox, while for some reason there seems to be more unity and just simply not too much. Since Skip Bayless really left, Skip Bayless and Colin Cowherd left ESPN, it hasn't really seemed as if ESPN was really for these discussions and arguments, and they will disagree, of course. First Take, they do disagree, but when Skip Bayless was on the air with Stephen A. Smith, do you know how often those guys disagree compared to how much Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith disagree? That was great TV. But here we are. This is Colin Cowherd. We're going to start with him. I'm going to be looking in between videos, but I will be pausing and stopping when I have a point to make. So let's go ahead and start it.
Choose wisely. Give the Cowboys a team-friendly deal. All right, college football playoff. Joel Klatt next hour. We'll yell and scream at each other. Nick Wright, too. Kenyon Martin. Mike Pouncey of the Chargers, multiple-time Pro Bowl center, used to be a Dolphin. So last night they came out with the new college football rankings, and I, first of all, didn't have a problem with it. I have Oklahoma in my 4. They had Oklahoma at 5, meaning Oklahoma's going to get in when Georgia loses to Bama. So they had Bama, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, and then they had Oklahoma 5, Ohio State 6. The key to me, of course, is they have Oklahoma ahead of Ohio State slightly, which they should. I think Oklahoma is better than Ohio State. I've stopped listening to Ohio State fans. They didn't make any sense.
Right, I'm going to stop it right there before we get on to the next point, which, is going to be definitely an effect for me. But real quick, of course, you feel like Oklahoma is the better team. That's great. You can have that opinion. I personally think, and a lot of other people will agree, especially how Ohio State played against Michigan, that Ohio State's a better team than Oklahoma. So that's subjective right there. So there's no earning that, and we'll talk about earning, whether or not you earned it or not, a little later, with earning versus deserving in the playoff. But saying that Oklahoma's better than Ohio State is a subjective statement. It is. They don't play like opponents. The only common opponent they have is TCU, where Urban Meyer was out for Ohio State, and that was the first game where Nick Bosa was hurt. Ohio State was starting to get banged up, and TCU was fully healthy, versus against Oklahoma, TCU wasn't fully healthy, and Oklahoma kind of had Lincoln Riley. Moving on to his next point.
Mid-season, talking about that coach they enabled, and they make no sense now, having lost to Purdue by 29 points, and they still think they could get in over Oklahoma, who lost to a rival on a neutral field in a last-second field goal, and they'll go back and beat that team, Texas, this weekend.
Okay, so this is a point everyone's hearing, of course, but I just want to say this for starters. You have to still listen to people, despite the fact if you disagree with people. And he brought up Zach Smith and the enabler that Urban Meyer was in this case, in his opinion, of course. And whether or not I share that opinion, you should not judge an entire group of people based on that not making sense, and just stop listening to them about topics that have nothing to do with that situation. So if you don't want to listen to people because you think they're outrageous about that situation, go ahead, but don't stop in general listening to them. Now, when you talk about Ohio State losing it to Purdue by 29 on the road versus Oklahoma getting beat by the rivals at the last second off a walk-up field goal, that's an argument everyone's going to hear. And maybe a loss is more valued than I give it, because I certainly would not say that Georgia was the third best team last year just because they had the widest margin of a loss. because, of course, I would say Georgia was probably deserving of #1 going into the playoffs since they did avenge their loss, which, again, is another thing we can talk about because he said they will avenge this weekend against Texas. Georgia looked impressive last year when they avenged that loss to Auburn. Oklahoma does not look that impressive this year. If they beat Texas, it's going to be because Texas is unable to win a game that they honestly really should. Because if you're able to beat Oklahoma when they're playing better with Stoops as the coordinator, they've looked worse with Ruffin McNeil as the defensive coordinator. If you can't beat Oklahoma now, that's Texas's fault. That's not really Oklahoma. Unless Oklahoma completely impresses me and really looks great, I'll put them in. But on the Ohio State perspective, in the Oklahoma perspective, you cannot judge these teams by just one game. And you make a crucial mistake when you judge Ohio State just on the Purdue game. And I cannot remember if he did this today or yesterday, but I'm almost positive it was yesterday. He said, we've never really had a champion that has had a 29-point loss. Not his words, but summarized up. Well, we also haven't seen a champion with this bad of a defense, especially in November. We haven't seen a champion like that or even a contender like that in the last few years or really since I can remember. That bad on defense. So either team you put into the playoff in this situation would be a first. Now, would you rather Ohio State be in the playoff with a one-off against Purdue, which it was a one-off. Ohio State hasn't gotten blown out like that against average teams or really, really good teams on their schedule, such as Penn State and Michigan, who they beat, by the way. It was a one-off. This has become a trend with Oklahoma. We've seen Oklahoma give up 40 points in 5 games this year, 40 points in 4 games in a row, and go to overtime with Army. Continue.
Oklahoma's the clear choice. Oklahoma scored 40-plus points in all but 2 games. Oklahoma has done something, at least one thing, great all year.
Let me stop that right again. When you talk about something, one thing great all year, you're consistently good, but you need to understand that Ohio State has not. You make a point here. Oklahoma has done that one thing, which is scoring on a consistent basis, and that's been the one thing they've done good. I think Ohio State has done really good, but not on a consistent basis like Oklahoma has. And, yeah, that's a good argument. But here's what I have to say to that is when Ohio State's offense struggled, it seems as if their defense steps up and makes plays, and the special teams can make plays when everyone's struggling. So we've seen Ohio State against Michigan State win in special teams, against Penn State win on defense with 3 straight stops to get the offense the ball a couple times and eventually end the game with a stop. And we've seen the offense win a game where Maryland was the offense. The defense didn't show up that day, and the offense covered their butt. I would say that the score was 62-39. Wasn't even indicative of how dominant Ohio State was in that ball game because Michigan scored a touchdown in garbage time. Michigan scored also on a gift by the special teams with a special teams turnover on a muffed kickoff. So really, if you're looking at it, and Ohio State probably left 4 to 7 points on the field. So we could possibly be looking at somewhere along a 69-25, 70-25 ball game. So Ohio State was completely dominant. They put all the pieces together, and they, against Michigan, and they will have a chance to show it again against Northwestern. They, against Michigan, though, on all 3 phases of the ball, was dominant and looked really good against a top 10 opponent. We haven't seen Oklahoma do that against a top 25 opponent.
I'm not saying they have defense. I'm not their special teams are great. I'm not saying they have the best game plan for every game. But in 90% of the times they came out to the football field this year, Oklahoma was a great offense. They ran it, they threw it, they protected their quarterback, and they scored over 40. What has Ohio State done all year to convince me they're a Final Four team? Did they run the ball every week? Nope. Did they play great defense every week? Nope. Did they have great coaching every week? Did you watch the Purdue game?
Okay. You are right. But you can say that about most teams. Oklahoma every week doesn't have a great defense. Some weeks Ohio State has a great defense. Some weeks they don't. Some weeks Ohio State is elite in the pass game, which, by the way, Ohio State is second passing the football in the country. They've been able to throw on everyone. You know, it's a disappointing game when Ohio State throws for 250 yards. It's a disappointing game almost when Ohio State throws for 300. We were talking about in a pass offense. I'm not even going to talk about Dwayne Haskins specifically because this isn't a Heisman campaign. We are talking about an offense that is throwing 400 yards in 5 different occasions. 4 or 5, I can't remember. Either way, that's very impressive. That is dominance right there. You can point to something. But Ohio State also has the ability to have success on every facet of the ball. And really, they've had a dominant D-line the whole time. The only game that they were controlled in the trenches was Purdue. And I think that was just because Ohio State didn't wake up. That whole game is a one-off, and even then Ohio State was able to throw. Granted, they threw it 77 times or something like that. Excuse me 1 second. Anyway, they did throw it 77 times. But they were still able to throw the ball with success. Really, Ohio State's downfall against Purdue offensively was they just weren't able to find out what they needed to do in the red zone. They started to get something together. They struggled and faltered in the red zone against Nebraska, too. They needed to figure out the red zone, in which they did. Moving on.
They scored under 33 times in the weak Big Ten, where Northwestern's in the championship game. And Northwestern couldn't win one out-of-conference game. And then mopped up on the weak Big Ten.
Under 33 times. You got to talk about this. When you're Ohio State, you went up and you got good rushers all throughout the Big Ten. You may not like the offenses, but the offenses will run the ball. They went up against a number 1 rush defense in the country. That was one of the times they didn't put up 30. The other time was when they laid an egg against Purdue. There's no excuse about that. And the other time was against a top 20 defense that is actually Penn State, which it may surprise you, but Penn State is a top 20 defense, and they still won 2 of those 3 games, one by 20 points, and one where their defense was able to make plays. The only one, again, is that one-off against Purdue where Ohio State didn't show up. So saying that against a weak Big Ten, you didn't score, the Big 12 defenses are far weaker and far inferior to the Big Ten's defenses. When you talk about watching these guys, how many pro guys are on the field? Look at Michigan State. They got pro guys on the field, including Kenny Willekes, who may be one of the better DNs in the country right now, and Joe Bocci, who's the most underrated middle linebacker, but he's a top 5 linebacker. And then you go up against Michigan, and you can just list off the talent on Michigan's defense. When you talk about Chase Winovich, when you talk about Rashawn Gary, David Long, Metellus, whoever you want to talk about, you can point to a lot of people in this Michigan defense that is NFL talent. And Penn State doesn't have NFL talent today in the NFL or in college right now in terms of going to the NFL draft this upcoming year, but Penn State is going to have them. They're just really young on defense, and they are still a top 20 defense.
Lincoln Riley, the coach of Oklahoma, and I'm all in Oklahoma here, their corner over Ohio State. Again, if you lose by 30 to Purdue and you don't get why nobody's into your stuff, I don't know what to tell you. But Lincoln Riley brought up the point about we're getting too caught up. Points on Oklahoma. Football's changed.
I think the standards have certainly changed. I think we see that at all levels, high school, college, and pro, that the amount of offensive output that all these different teams are putting out is just simply different than what it's been before. You know, certainly every team out there is trying to be great on offense and be great on defense and special teams. Ultimately, you've got to find ways to win games, and that's what our guys have been able to do here.
There's the thing, though. Ohio State has found ways to win games, have been criticized for it. Oklahoma has found ways to win games and have been praised for it, and has been in the top 10 on a consistent basis this season, while Ohio State fell out because, and go ahead and comment, I'm watching the comment section, Ohio State fell out of the top 10 because they lost the game. Oklahoma's loss not as bad, but when you look at it, the reason why Ohio State's in this position is because they find ways to win games and in a more emphatic fashion. You're not going to be able to find ways to win games if you continue playing like this against the Alabamas in the world. You cannot find ways to win games if you keep playing like Oklahoma is against the Clemsons against the world of the world. But if you talk about Ohio State, when you get Michigan on your schedule and you do that to a Michigan team, you can compete. And if you play like that and we've seen it from Ohio State, we haven't seen it from Oklahoma. When you can play like that, you can beat an Alabama. You can beat a Clemson, assuming that Alabama is not unstoppable like everyone keeps promoting. And you can beat anyone in the country when you're that talented as Ohio State is, and you put all those pieces together, and it all forms into a blowout win against Michigan. And all this stuff that has happened throughout the season where Ohio State's found ways to win on all three phases of the game. Once those pieces come together, you know you have a team that can go toe-to-toe with anyone in the country because of the talent. Oklahoma just doesn't have the talent defensively. They got athletes, but they don't have the talent, and they can't tackle, and they can't cover either. And there's another point here that I brought up yesterday in this debate. Ohio State's +5 in the turnover margin. Oklahoma's -2. You will not beat Alabama if you lose a turnover battle. I don't remember the last time someone has lost the turnover battle to Alabama and won the ball game. I don't even know if that's happened under Saban other than his first year. I don't know. I didn't do any research. It's something to be curious about. If anyone knows, make sure you tell me. But moving on.
By the way, Ohio State fans are saying, what about Oklahoma's defense? Buckeye fan, you just gave up 39 points to Michigan's offense, which looks about 9 years past its prime.
As I've made this point, and I'm going to respond about Michigan. Michigan's been scoring on people all year long. The only team they haven't scored on is Notre Dame, in which they did outscore the Irish in the last 3 quarters, and it was the first game of a transfer quarterback in a new system. Plus the fact Michigan, a lot of people keep saying that Harbaugh needs to upgrade his offense, and which he does, but Michigan isn't the same old 2 tight ends, fullback in the I formation with the running back in behind. No, they're running most of their plays out of the shotgun. They still need to evolve, and they're working on evolving. That's why Michigan's going to be dangerous here in a year or two, or really dangerous. I'm talking actual playoff dangerous. They could win a championship in the next couple of years. Same with Penn State, by the way, if James Franklin sticks around. So, yes, they are evolving, and they're scoring a lot of points on a lot of people. But the other thing that you got to talk about with Michigan is against Ohio State. Yes, you did allow 39 to that Michigan offense. Didn't that Michigan offense get a garbage touchdown late in the game? And didn't that Michigan offense score on a gift by the special teams? And that's Ohio State's fault that they allowed that score. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not necessarily the defense's fault. The defense played fantastic. They got so much pressure on Shea Patterson, forced turnovers, won the turnover battle, and it really wasn't all that close throughout the game because of the defense. If the defense didn't show up against Michigan, Ohio State would have been in a shootout again. They showed up.
39 at home to Michigan State's sort of I formation, pound down the throat offense. Gave up 50.
As I just said, pound down the throat, I formation. I don't even remember if Michigan outside of the 5-yard line, like I'm talking in the red zone, 5-yard line, I don't even know if Michigan even ran one play under I formation that wasn't a short yardage situation inside the red zone.
51 to Maryland. I want to hear about your great defense.
51 to Maryland. We've had this talk with people. It was a breakdown defensively. I agree. It was a breakdown defensively. They went up against the 15th rush offense in the country, though. And they were able to hang their hat on that run game against Ohio State, was able to exploit with a lot of eye candy and a smart play caller in Matt Canada there. They were able to exploit Ohio State. When you talk about 40 to Kansas, that's a lot less impressive considering that Kansas doesn't excel anywhere on the offensive side of the ball. Their highest ranking is 62nd, which I believe is in pass rush offense. I think it is 62nd. They're not even close to. They're not top 50 in any offensive category. And you allowed them to score 40, which they are. I want to say I can't remember the number. I'm pretty sure in total offense they were 100th. And in points per game, they were somewhere in the 90s, low 90s.
But by the way, even the SEC, which plays great defense, the best defense in college football. Sorry, but didn't Oklahoma drop 48 in it last year? Didn't UCF?
48 in 2 overtimes. Yes. 48 in 2 overtimes. And you know what? I'm pretty sure, I can't remember exactly. It was a long time ago, almost a year ago. But I'm pretty sure they actually did have 45 in regulation, so I'll give them credit. They've been able to score on people in the past, and they scored on Georgia last year. But I think there was a little bit of mismatch with Georgia that no one talked about last year. And also a couple of mistakes by Georgia that kept Oklahoma in the game. But the mismatch was simply Baker Mayfield versus that secondary. You know why? And we saw it between Alabama. Georgia is very talented in the secondary last year. They were able to lock down receivers, stick with them. But the safeties and the corners were able to be looked off very well. And that was the experience in Baker Mayfield that scored 45 points. And that was something that Kyler Murray doesn't do all that great. Kyler Murray just honestly buys time until he sees someone open. He doesn't look off defenders. Defenders don't blow their assignments unless they get beat head one-on-one. Kyler Murray a lot of times will stare down his receiver, unlike Baker Mayfield did.
Dropped 34 on the great Auburn team. Look around football, folks. Everybody's scoring over 30. Most teams, the good ones, are scoring over 40. Oklahoma tends to score over 50. I'm not – look at around the NFL right now. Everybody tells me how great the Chicago Bears defense is. You do get they gave up over 30 to New England. Aaron Rodgers, I'm watching Chicago play week after week. People move the ball up and down the field on them. And that's the best defense in the NFL. I hear about the Rams, all their great players. They give up like 25 a week, 28 a week. Where are the great defenses in the NFL? I don't see them. Jaguars defense? Steelers lead the NFL in sacks. Is that a great defense? I just saw Case Keenum move up and down the field. You're all caught up in Oklahoma's defense. By the way, Oklahoma hasn't had a great defense in years because they play in the Big 12, and the way to win in the Big 12 is spread the ball out. So many good quarterbacks. Warm weather. Everybody throws it. Great receivers and backs. It's not a great defensive conference, but to win the Big 12, got to sling it. And they do. But when they match up with the SEC teams, they also score 40-plus on them. Beat Alabama 4 or 5 years ago. Beat Auburn a couple years ago. Should have beaten Georgia last year. Nobody's shutting out Oklahoma. And as Lincoln Riley said, this is the new age.
No one ever said that, oh, if Oklahoma makes the playoff, they're going to get shut out. And no one should say that this version of Ohio State would get shut out too. And honestly, I would say that Oklahoma's going to score at least 30 points, but they are also going to probably allow at least 55 to an Alabama offense. They are 127th in pass yards allowed, and they got to go up against Tua Tagovailoa. You're telling me that Tua won't throw all over that, and he won't be, just craving the chance to play Oklahoma over Ohio State. You know why? Because Ohio State has athletes. Ohio State will get pressure on Tua. Ohio State will cover his receivers a lot better, so he will have to hold the ball longer. Even if Oklahoma brings all-out blitzes on every play against Alabama, somebody's going to get open within 2 seconds, and there will be 6 blown assignments all over the field when you talk about Oklahoma. Not the case with Ohio State in the secondary. The only place where you get blown assignments for Ohio State is a linebacking core, which, by the way, looked a hell of a lot better against Michigan.
Forget your grandpa's football. Forget your dad's football. It's not even your older brother's football. In the last 3 years, offense has exploded. In the past 12 months, it's been almost a meteor. And I am firmly entrenched, and I'm glad the committee sees it that way too. Oklahoma's 1 spot ahead of Ohio State, meaning if they both win this weekend and Georgia loses, and they will to Bama, the Sooners will get in over the Buckeyes.
Okay, well, we don't know if that's the case, of course, because we're not in that committee room. We don't know the type of discussions that's going on. He's probably right, though. I'm not going to act like he is wrong. I think he is probably right in that situation. All right, so the next episode, I'm trying to find it. See if this is it. It is, I'm trying to find a date. Yeah, okay, this is today. This is Skip Bayless versus Shannon Sharp, which someone, I don't know if you've heard this, but some certain person is on my side with this argument.
Oh, my new guy, when he said, I don't care who comes in here, Golden State, Milwaukee, Lakers, as long as you take that L with you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they are heading home, so hopefully the Lakers can
If they don't go 4-0, I'm asking Santa Claus. I hadn't asked Santa for nothing in a very long time, Skip.
Really?
Yep.
Right,
What are you going to ask for?
I don't know just
I
yet.
think you're going to ask for somebody's job.
I don't know what I'm going to ask for. They say you're not supposed to tell people publicly.
You could ask
on
for
this show.
that Brad.
Go ahead and skip.
Moving on, because we have one
Right,
game
there we
left in the season for college football and some drama with the college football playoff. Right now, we got Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame are all undefeated. They're the top 3 teams in the newest rankings. You got Georgia, they're 4th right now, but they're a big underdog against Alabama on Saturday. And on the outside, looking in, Oklahoma and Ohio State. The Sooners are 5th, and they face Texas on Saturday. And the Buckeyes, well, they're 1 spot behind, and they'll face Northwestern in the Big Ten Championship on Fox. So, Shannon, if all the favorites win on Saturday, who should get that last spot? Are you going with Oklahoma or Ohio State?
Oklahoma. It's not even close, Skip. Ohio State has the worst loss of a top 10 team in all of football. How do I get past a 29-point loss to Purdue, who just became bowl eligible the last game of the season? What am I supposed to do with that? They beat Nebraska by 4. And you know this is not Dr. Tom Osborne, the Cornhuskers. They've been terrible. Okay, they beat Maryland by 1 in overtime. Maryland has 5 wins. What am I supposed to do with that, Jenny? Oklahoma lost by 3 to their rivals, basically on a neutral site. And
Not basically, it was a neutral site.
Okay,
Go
neutral
ahead.
site. Okay, and it's a rivalry game, so you know.
I'd say it's the best rivalry in college football, but go ahead.
I wouldn't go that far, but okay anyway. Iron Bowl Skip. But stop interrupting me. I don't even know why you're talking. It's not your turn, Skip Baylor. The fact of the matter is, Skip, how do I get past a 29-point loss? Okay, you beat Northwestern. I mean, so let's just say for the sake of argument, you beat Northwestern by 100. Northwestern, really?
What if you beat them like 62-39?
Well, that's what they're going to try to do. First of all, everybody knew, with the exception of you and khaki pants, that Michigan was overrated.
Let's just stop right there. No one knew that Michigan was overrated. Coming into that game, I did see people picking Ohio State. No one expected Ohio State to blow out Michigan. You are a liar if you expected that. And most people in America, most college football fans and most college football analysts expected Michigan to win this football game. And they said the final score is going to be a 23-point game. Who wins that ball game? Easily Michigan, right? Don't act like you thought Michigan was overrated. Do not act like you thought that. You may have thought they were going to lose to Ohio State. That doesn't make their rating at the time overrated. And that just takes me off this argument that, oh, Michigan was overrated. No, you can't have it both ways. You can't have Michigan in your top 4. And in the next week, when they get throttled, I'm talking thrashed and completely outplayed on every phase of the game, you cannot respond and say, that team's overrated. We're not going to give credit to the team who blew them out. We're only going to give credit, which, by the way, it's not like Michigan is untested. This is the last game of the season, and the season in which they beat Penn State, ranked number 12, by 35 points and only lost by 7 against a playoff team on the road. Come on.
I had to tell you all year, but you didn't want to listen to me. You never listen to me, but that's okay.
Well, you're mostly wrong, but go ahead.
I'm always right. Oklahoma.
How many cases of dude did I win on Michigan this year? 2. Thank you.
Skip. Oklahoma. Let's just say, okay, Oklahoma went to TCU, beat them by 25 at home. Ohio State beat TCU by 12 on a neutral site.
And we've talked about this many, many times, so I'm just going to tell you. Urban Meyer wasn't there, and TCU was fully healthy against Ohio State and not against Oklahoma.
Now, granted, TCU is not what we thought they were going to be.
Yep.
But, come on, Skip. Really? Really? What am I supposed to do with this? If Oklahoma wins, it'd be a shame. I'm gonna stop watching football. If Oklahoma beat Texas and they put Ohio State.
Last year, I was ticked off that the committee went ahead and picked a non-conference champion who lost their last game by 12 points in the Final Four. But guess who broadcasted all 3 games and watched all 3 games in the college football playoff? Me. This is a petty argument. If you don't get your way, that you are going to stop watching college football. So please do so. Please do so. Shannon Sharp. Just because you wouldn't get your way in this situation, which, by the way, it's looking as if both teams win, Georgia loses to Alabama, Oklahoma's going to get in. I'm not going to go on a rampage and be like, I'm not watching football again. I'm not watching college. No, it's your job to talk about this topic. And it's your job to keep up with these sports. So quit being so petty. And again, I have respect for Shannon Sharp. I got, with all due respect to Shannon Sharp, he's a tremendous guy from what I see. He's a tremendous analyst and was a tremendous tight end in the NFL.
Because I believe they're going to beat Northwestern. If they put them in over Oklahoma, I'm done watching college football.
So before I get to my argument here, let me extrapolate from what you just said. So if Kyler Murray manages to get his team to a playoff berth in spite of the worst good team defense in the history of college football, didn't you just make the case for Kyler being the Heisman Trophy?
Let me explain to you too what he means by good team, the worst good team defense, by a team who is a good team, a good enough team to contend for the playoff, really be in the top 10. They are the worst defense we have ever seen.
Trophy winner?
No.
I think you just did, right?
Well, can we get some due on that? Let me get a chance to get my due back.
No, I'm asking you a question.
Yes, okay.
Kyler Murray gets a team to the Final Four with that defense. He's the Heisman winner. He should be run away with the Heisman, right? Alabama's got the 3rd best defense in college football statistically in points allowed.
And they play in the toughest conference. Which is the tougher conference.
Okay.
Which would you say was easier to do, Jenny? Throw for 37 touchdowns in the Big 12 or throw for 36 touchdowns in the SEC? I just want to know, Skip, just for my satisfaction.
Talking about overcoming this defense. So now to my case.
Skip.
Ohio State deserves to be the 4th team in because Oklahoma does not deserve to be the 4th team in. And this is painful for me to talk about, painful for me to admit publicly because I was, unlike somebody across from me, I was born and raised a Sooner fan. I can't help it because it's in my blood. I was taken to my first University of Oklahoma game when I was 5 years old, and I had to watch them lose to Notre Dame at home to end a 47-game winning streak. Think anybody will ever win 47?
No.
Okay, 47 in a row they had won. So this is painful for me, but it's been even more painful to have to sit and watch every snap of every Oklahoma game this year, because this is, I'm going to say it again, the worst good team defense in the history of college football. This defense, let me just say this, the offense set the all-time record for yards per play. That's pretty great. The offense led the nation in scoring, thanks primarily to Kyler Murray, who should win the Heisman Trophy. The defense ranked 99th in the country and ranked 127th out of only 130 schools in passing yards allowed. I'll say it one more time. They're 127th in passing yards allowed, and they won their last 4 games despite the defense giving up 47 points a game. That's an eyesore. I could barely watch the West Virginia game last Friday night. I would just cringe and close my eyes. It made me sick at my stomach because they had to win it 59-56. And whenever West Virginia wanted to score an 80-yard touchdown, they just did. Because, again, we even fired our coordinator, Mike Stoops, and replaced him, and it didn't matter. It actually seemed to make it worse. This is the worst defense in the Big 12, which is the worst defensive conference in America, to your point.
Oh, so don't you make my argument for Tua winning the Heisman?
No.
You just had to work.
No.
Did he?
So Texas scored 48 on Oklahoma, and Texas averaged in its other games 34 points. So that was by far the most Texas scored against anybody.
Can I ask you one question, Skip?
I'm not finished yet. You can't. So I don't know if there's some hidden agenda here for you, because I just do the hypothetical of Oklahoma versus Alabama in a national semifinal. Okay, so seriously, I'm being totally objective about this. Is it possible that Kyler Murray could figure out a way to score 40 against the number 3 defense of St. Nick in Alabama? The way Deshaun Watson scored 40 in the national championship game in a loss, going back, 3 years ago? Yeah. Could he do that? Sure, he could score 40. Yeah. Tua could name the score. St. Nick could name however many points. Would they want to score 60 or 70? Or seriously, if they went into the game saying, let's go score 80, they could score 80. The final score could be 80-40, because Tua throwing against this defense, the 127th ranked pass defense, it would be a joke. It would be an embarrassment. I don't want to have to watch it. They don't belong. So, yes, I watched every snap of that Ohio State at Purdue game. It was back on October 20th. It was 49-20. And I couldn't quit watching it because I was in awe of what a troubled football team that had become. Because there's talent everywhere. You could just see it on the field. But because of the Urban Meyer suspension and all the issues surrounding the team and all the social media controversies that just raged back and forth, it wasn't itself. And yet, right on schedule, against Michigan, it came together. And my eye test tells me that right now, Ohio State is a better overall football team than Oklahoma is. All wall-to-wall, better overall football team, a more representative football team, a more deserving team to play Alabama in a national semifinal. I believe Ohio State would give Alabama a better game than Oklahoma could give.
If you don't mind me.
All right, before we go to Shannon Sharp, the reason I did not stop it there and just let Skip Bayless ramble on is because I agree with everything he's saying. And by the way, Skip Bayless gets a bad rep, and I don't agree with him all the time. I don't line up with really either of these guys all the time. I'm pretty much split 50-50 when these guys argue, and they argue a lot. And this is why, guys, I just want to take a moment to appreciate what Fox is doing with this show. This is why I like Fox more than ESPN, is because there's not as much of a consensus. You can have this discussion, and you can have that middleman, too. You can have a Joe Klatt, which I don't know if we have time to, but we might visit it. We can have a Joe Klatt who's in the middle here saying, yeah, I can see Oklahoma being better. I can see Ohio State being better by the end of this weekend. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and conform to Oklahoma being the better team. I'm not going to shy away from that. Go ahead and say that. But if Ohio State, and Joe Klatt makes this point, if Ohio State does this again against Northwestern and shows that they have fixed problems, while Oklahoma shows that they have not fixed problems, then Ohio State should get in. That's essentially what Joel Klatt has said. So let's go on to Shannon Sharpe, and then I think I'm going to end the stream.
Let's go, Skip. Which is more reprehensible? Giving up 51 points to Maryland, 49 points to Purdue, or giving up 45 points?
As bad as they have been, it's not even remotely as bad as the Oklahoma defense has been. This is the all-time eyesore embarrassment in college football. All-time. There's never been anything like this before. The disparity between an offense and a defense. Listen.
And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop the Skip Bayless and answer the question indirect because, of course, when you take Texas and compare that game to Maryland and Purdue, you give the nod to Oklahoma. But the problem with this is it's just unrepresentative of Oklahoma, and it's fully representative of Ohio State at its worst. It's not representative of Oklahoma, how they've been throughout the season, specifically through the month of November. 6 times they have struggled against inferior opponents. 5 times inferior opponents have scored. And I say inferior when it comes to Texas and West Virginia because they are by the committee's rankings. But even if we say that, oh, Texas and West Virginia are close enough to them, even if you take those 2 teams out, 3 times you've allowed inferior opponents, no teams over 500. None of these 3 teams over 500. They have a combined record of, let's see, combined they have 11-14 wins, and losses they would have 16-22. So you're talking about 14-22 as a combined record, and not so great of offenses, specifically in Kansas, you've allowed 40 or more in against. And that's why it's flawed, is because you're not taking the full sample size, or at least of both teams. That's a problem.
Eiler belongs, if I could just send my offense to the national finals, like that works.
You talking about like Ohio State has a team defense. Okay, while Oklahoma is ranked 111th in total D, Ohio State is 68.
Okay, but
yeah. That's a problem that Oklahoma's at 111.
That's like 50 places
Okay,
better.
what about scoring D?
Yep.
Ohio State is 57th in scoring D.
Okay, mine's 99. That's huge. That's 40 places.
Defensive yards per play.
You can do it all day long. They have not been very good. This has been all-time bad, Shannon. You're missing the point.
Yeah.
They can't stop anything
Both
from
teams
anybody.
have 1 loss. Which loss is worse? 29 to Purdue or by 3 to Texas?
But when you have troubled football teams and all of a sudden they come together right on
that's
schedule.
That's an excuse, Skip.
No, I don't care.
That's an excuse. No, that's an excuse.
It's not an excuse per se. It's a reason. And this is one of my biggest issues in sports. Oh, it's an excuse. Things happen through the course of the season. These are college kids. Things happen. But at the end of the day, which team would you be more comfortable with sending them to the Cotton Bowl? And we will talk about, and it will be the Cotton Bowl, it will probably be the Orange Bowl with Alabama. And we'll talk about that, or at least Shannon and Skip will do it for me in a minute.
He would watch those games. If you watch Friday night and Saturday morning, as I did, that's Saturday morning here, noontime Eastern.
Yes.
I just sat back and said, Ohio State's just a better football team than Oklahoma is right now. They just are. Oklahoma can't stop anything. What do you think the score would be, Alabama, Oklahoma? Come on, you're an Alabama nut.
I think Alabama would beat Ohio State and beat Oklahoma.
Okay, what would the score?
He didn't answer that question because he knows Ohio State would give a better game than Oklahoma would. But it would be, number one, entertaining for Oklahoma, specifically Kyler Murray, to go up against Tua in that quarterback matchup. But number two, when you're talking about Shannon Sharpe, he has a obvious, and just like Skip Bayless tries to keep it away, and I give him a lot of credit for that, but he still has a bias for Oklahoma football. And when they're really bad, he might exaggerate it. I feel like he's exaggerating how bad they are now, but I still think he's making a lot of good points here. But they're bad nonetheless. But anyway, Shannon Sharpe here is probably wanting Oklahoma instead of Ohio State in the playoff because he knows that Oklahoma has no shot against Alabama. I believe that firmly. I believe this. And you can go ahead and comment. Tell me what you think. Alabama will beat Oklahoma 10 out of 10 times. I cannot say the same thing about Ohio State. It might be 8 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, but it's a better shot than what Oklahoma is providing.
You think it'd be closer in Ohio State? Come on, tell me. You know you do. You know Ohio State would give Alabama a little better game than Oklahoma. Am I right?
At the end of the day, Skip,
what do you think the score would be?
They're going to take that L.
Okay. Is this all about just wanting Alabama to win 80-40?
No. Okay, so at the end of the day, it's all about taking that L. Then why not just throw in if UCF wins against Memphis, throw them in there against Alabama. At the end of the day, it's just an L, right? At the end of the day, it's an L. No, you're trying to get the best games, despite the fact that Alabama's probably going to win. There's a reason why they're number one. If you're expecting that Alabama's going to win anyway, you want to try to get the best game. You want to get the best game. So this argument that it's an L anyway is a failure by Shannon Sharpe, and I feel as if it is trying to cop out.
Kyler Murray?
Alabama's taking care of business. Ohio State had every opportunity, Skip Bayless.
80-40. That would be
Purdue. You gave up 49 points to Purdue. You gave up 51 to Maryland, who just scored 3 points against Penn State, Skip.
Well,
and Oklahoma gave up 48 to Texas, 45 to sorry, it wasn't 45. It was 46 to Texas Tech, who's 5-7. 47 to Oklahoma State, who's 6-6. And my favorite, the 100th offense in total offense, scored 40 on Oklahoma. Yes, I am pushing that Kansas game. That Kansas game is a game. And it's one game. You cannot define a season off of one game like you tried to do with Purdue. And honestly, you can't do it with 2 games with Maryland, because Maryland and Purdue aren't really trends, because the offense was able to more than match what Maryland did. And as a result, Ohio State won the game. So really, Maryland's not comparable to Purdue. But even 2 games isn't a trend. They could be 2 one-offs that can be concerning. It starts to become a concern, not a trend. It becomes a trend when you can look at Kansas and say, okay, you allow 40 to Kansas. Is there anywhere else I can find 40? Oh, you can find it in 4 other places, 5 different spots. Oh, and you can find an overtime game against a 9-2 Army. I'll give you that. They're 9-2. But Army at home, where Army's best win is against Buffalo, and they got thrashed by Duke a couple weeks prior. And I believe that one was in West Point, too.
So you want me to start in on the last 5 games Oklahoma's played? You want me to start in?
Were they trouble? Were they trouble when they gave up?
Do you realize Oklahoma gave up 40 at home to Kansas? To the Kansas Jayhawks. They scored 50.
Not to discredit anything that Skip Bayless says, but if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure I do, let me check this. Oklahoma was on the road against Kansas. I'm pretty sure this one was in Lawrence. I'm going to check real quick. But I'm 90% positive that it was in. Oh, no, it was at home. Wow. At home against Kansas allows 40. Oh, no. Oh, no, I was wrong.
That's it. That's the end of it. Listen, any team that would give up 40 to Kansas at home, they're out. They're disqualified. Stop it. Just stop it. I don't want to inflict the embarrassment on myself again. It's over.
The objective.
Stop it.
Hold on. I thought when you played sports, the objective was to win the game. Some teams win it with defense. They suffocate your defense. Some teams win with offense. But at the end of the day, did I get the dub or did I take the L?
Look at the teams that Oklahoma's playing, though. You got Kansas, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. And I mentioned this. They barely survived against those teams. Yes, they barely beat West Virginia. Guess what the other game was that they really struggled in? Texas. 48-45. Oh, wow. And I'm just looking at Oklahoma's schedule. I just realized this, and I'm going to go ahead and be done with Undisputed, and I'm about to be done after this point. TCU was actually after a bye week, so even enhance that a little further. You had time to prepare for TCU, a lot more time than Ohio State did. When Ohio State had a Pac-12 opponent that you had to play before TCU. But the other point I'm going to make is you have Florida Atlantic 14, UCLA 21 points, Iowa State 27, which, by the way, I will say this, Hakeem Butler went crazy, 21 to Army, 33 to Baylor, 48 to Texas, 27 to TCU, 14 to Kansas State, 46 to Texas Tech, 47 to Oklahoma State, 40 to Kansas, and 56 to West Virginia. If you take a look at Ohio State's scores, I'm going to that Ohio State schedule right as we speak. 31 to Oregon State in the opening game. Not good. Trust me, that one was not fun. But only 3 to Rutgers, 28 to TCU, only 6 to Tulane, 26 to Penn State, 26 to Indiana, 14 to Minnesota, 14 to Minnesota. The one-off against Purdue was 49, 31 to Nebraska, 6 to Michigan State, 51 to Maryland, and 39 to Michigan. When you look at that, I named you 3 times where Ohio State didn't even allow a touchdown in the game. Did not allow a single touchdown. That match, those 3 times can be compared to Oklahoma's 0 times where they allowed a team to be under 2 touchdowns. The least amount of points that Oklahoma has allowed is 14. Ohio State has allowed something at that or lower 4 times. And I'm talking, we've had 3 games with 1 touchdown not even scored. 1 game where, and if you add in 4 games where 2 touchdowns or less were scored. So you're talking about 14 or less. You got Rutgers, who scored 3. Tulane, who scored 6. No touchdowns in either of those games, by the way. 2 touchdowns from Minnesota. Minnesota scored 2 touchdowns exactly with 14. And then Michigan State 6 and no touchdowns scored. But even if you want to round up the 6 to a touchdown, let's just say it was a touchdown. Even though they didn't score a touchdown, it was the scores. Even then, Oklahoma doesn't compare to Ohio State. You got 4 games that match up to 2 games of Oklahoma's when you want to say 14 or less. And if you want to say 13 or less, Ohio State has you 3-0. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I hope you guys liked this reaction that I had to Skip and Shannon. Thank you again. I'll see you later.